Hey, good morning, everybody. It's Chamber Matt, and I am here this morning with Colton Myers, who is running for the 35th Legislative District, position number one, against the incumbent Republican Dan Griffey. And the 35th district encompasses, I was told yesterday, 1,640 some odd square miles. It includes all of Mason County, a portion of Thurston County, and then a portion of Kitsap County, which includes the Glenwood, Sunny Slope, Seebeck area. So that's why we have Colton on today, because and invariably he will represent somebody out there. And we wanted to invite Colton in, give him an opportunity to tell us a little bit about himself, along with the other candidates that are running in the various positions or the other races here in 2020. They're all available on our YouTube channel, all the ones that we've been able to complete. So I'd encourage everybody to go check those out if you have questions on the county commissioner race, or if you're not in the 35th and 26th, those are there also. So Colton, welcome this morning. Thank you for joining us. Um, um, I don't know if we want to kick things right off, and you can kind of tell us a little bit about yourself. What in the world possessed you to want to get into the world of politics? And then, of course, the $1 million question is kind of, why do you think you're the best person to represent the citizens of the 35th legislative district?
Absolutely. Thank you, Matt. Good morning. Thank you to the Chamber for putting this on, and thank you for everyone who is tuning into this. My name is Colton Myers. I have grown up in the 35th District my entire life. I was born and raised in the Kitsap County area, as have three generations of my family. After graduating from local public schools, I went up and did my bachelor's up at Western Washington University, moved back to the area for a little bit, and then actually decided to go get my master's around the 2016 era, and decided to pursue my master's in public policy, public administration, and decided kind of during that time, I thought, I didn't know whether that would lead me back to the area, or if I would kind of stay where I was and try and be an agent of change there. But it wound up kind of being looking at my home community, the place that I had called home, the place that I grew up, and really seeing that, by every metric, the 35th district has fallen behind and been taken for granted by what I perceive to be ineffective leadership. Our socioeconomic outcomes rank in the bottom of the state. Unemployment levels have remained well above the state average. Income levels have remained well below. Our health access, provider capacity, health outcomes rank in the bottom of the state. Our educational outcomes in Mason County alone, 5 of our 6 public school districts rank in the bottom half of the state. So for me, it was really a matter of, I could be kind of a small fish in a big pond in the area of Seattle where I was getting my master's at the University of Washington, or I could move back to my community and really, bring my lived experience and educational background to be an agent of change in an area that's desperately needing new leadership. I've said kind of my spiel for why I believe I'm the best candidate is, I believe I bring the lived professional and educational experience needed to be an effective legislator. As I mentioned, I grew up in this district. 3 generations of my family have grown up in this district. I was born and raised in Kitsap County. I now live in the Thurston County part. And I actually, during my studies, got to spend some time out in Mason County, where I was actually working with our community health and safety leaders, our local fire authorities, our law enforcement, to develop a strategic response plan to the opioid epidemic. I bring the educational experience. I come from a background in policy. My decisions naturally will be informed by evidence-based practices because that's what I was taught, and not partisan politics, which unfortunately I believe the representative has been influenced by. In addition, I come with a professional background in policy. I currently work as a senior health policy analyst for one of the largest agencies in the state, Washington State Healthcare Authority. And I recognize the incredible silos and gaps that exist in our healthcare delivery system. I think that that's something, as we're looking to come out on the other end of this pandemic, I think that we need to have people at the table who understand our healthcare system, who understand the necessary reforms that need to be made to our healthcare system. And so that's really a combination of why I decided to step up and why I decided to, return to my home community and put my hat into the ring.
Super, thank you. So we'll jump into the hot seat now.
All
And
right.
the first question is, What do you see as the most important? I can't even talk this morning. What do you see as the most important challenges facing the state, um, and how do you propose addressing them?
Absolutely. Well, there's a lot of challenges that we're being faced with. And, as I've said, a lot of the challenges, particularly facing the 35th district, existed prior to COVID-19. All of those disparities that I laid out in my opening statement all existed prior to COVID-19, but certainly uh, COVID has exacerbated those challenges. We've seen local businesses close. We've seen people that are struggling to keep a roof over their head. We've seen people have to make tough choices about putting food on the table and being furloughed from their places of employment. I personally am someone as a state employee who had to take days of furlough. We're facing, of course, at the state level, a budget crisis and recession unlike none seen since the Great Depression, to be quite honest. One of the most immediate concerns, of course, is making sure that we are economically solvent, and in the long run, creating economic stability. I think a harder lesson, unfortunately, from the last recession was we made too deep of cuts and lasting cuts to our social net programs, our social safety net programs like TANF, which a lot of Washingtonians are currently relying upon. And so I think immediately we need to be protecting those and looking for other sources of revenue. I certainly am a strong proponent of closing corporate loopholes that would allow us to get some revenue incoming into our state. But also, I'm sure that you're going to ask this question at some point. Washington State has the most regressive tax code in the nation. That's not a statement of opinion. That's something that experts have laid out time and time again. We rank at the very bottom. We overly rely on the sales and property taxes, which hurt our middle and low income earners in this state. Meanwhile, the wealthiest, the corporations, don't pay their fair share. So, I certainly am someone who would be looking to even the playing field when I came to Olympia so that we could give our working families a break and give them some relief, because that's exactly what they're looking for right now in this pandemic.
Okay, outstanding. So you read my mind. You looked at my cheat sheets here because the next question is about taxes.
There we go.
And you know, uh, we got B&O taxes, we have gas taxes, excise taxes, sales taxes, income taxes, capital gains taxes, payroll taxes, emission taxes, property taxes, road mileage taxes. It seems like there's just about a tax on everything.
Yeah.
Are there solutions other than taxes available to address our budget shortfalls? And what would be your preferred method for dealing with our budget shortfall?
Yeah. Well, certainly, there are other areas to promote growth. In addition to, of course, avoiding the tax solution. As I mentioned, the 35th district is an area that, of course, is in dire need of some economic growth and economic stability. I think that we have a lot of opportunity to bring in growth in the form of good livable wage jobs, in the form of clean energy jobs. I truly see the 35th as an area that is prime for potential in that department. And that's one way certainly that we can, attain economic growth. And another way, of course, is we need to be working with our federal partners. Congressman Derek Kilmer and whoever will be my congresswoman down here in the 10th, who overlaps with the 35th district, either Congresswoman Dolio or Congresswoman Strickland, because a lot of access to capital, a lot of access that could help our small businesses, our PPP program at the federal level, or helping our CDFIs like Peninsula Credit Union, which operates here in Shelton, and does a lot of work on the ground for helping to build capital and opportunity for people that are struggling. And they actually just got a grant, a $900,000 grant to help with affordable housing. So I think part of that, if we're looking outside of the state level, certainly I want to be working with our federal partners as well to be able to get necessary funds in that help our district. Because honestly and truly, I believe that our district has lacked an advocate for them, not just from working with our congressional leaders, but certainly at the state level as well. It matters that the 35th district is not represented at the majority table. It matters that we're not able to advocate for necessary investments back into our community. So outside of taxes and talking about the myriad of taxes, and I agree with you, I think it's always difficult to talk about needing to reform our tax code when people say, I'm taxed enough, I'm overly taxed, I don't want to talk about this. And I agree with them, I hear them. I think certainly, I will mention again, I think it's unfortunate the representative has said the same thing, and yet when he's had opportunities to say lower the property taxes, he voted against it. And then refuses to commit, of course, to making the wealthy pay their fair share. In fact, in our last forum, he said that we should cherish our millionaires and billionaires when asked if he agreed that we need to level the playing field in Washington state and make the wealthy corporations pay their fair share. So we have very different approaches to how we would like to solve this, budget crisis and budget shortfall, but those are some of my ideas, at least.
All right, so let's go ahead and shift gears here then. One of the issues facing local businesses is finding an adequate and well-trained workforce.
Mhm.
Education funding is too often left to levies, local levies, and not adequately funded at the state level. What ideas do you have to update our school funding, and how would you implement those changes?
Yeah, well, again, this sort of ties into the tax question as well, but I'll give you a little anecdote as well. In graduate school, I had a budget professor who taught me a very valuable lesson that said, if you want to know about an organization or agency's values, look at their budget. What does it say about our state budget that we underfund public education by hundreds of millions of dollars? And not only public education, we underfund special education by hundreds of millions of dollars. We are underfunding and selling short the most vulnerable people in our state when it's codified in our state constitution that every child is entitled to a quality education. That is something that is very near and dear to my heart. Obviously, as a public school attendee, I've got a nephew who just started kindergarten this fall, virtually, of course. We need to be fully funding our public education, and unfortunately, we're not doing that. Just in the Shelton community again, the Shelton Public School District announced $7 million in budget cuts, including the layoff of over 30 FTEs. That included paraeducators, that included bus drivers, that included janitorial staff, custodians. This is going to be an ongoing issue, an ongoing crisis until we are willing to adequately fund our public education system. Obviously, as I mentioned, until we get a tax code, I think, that can balance it out so that we can bring in the revenue we need to actually keep our commitments to our young people and to our teachers. That is how I believe that we can fully fund our public education, because absolutely we've got difficulties with caps on our levies. Certainly there's, tweaks that could be made at the legislature in terms of, lifting the lid on the levies, in terms of, changing the ceiling and the percentages, et cetera. But, those are more nuanced, small, incremental ways in which we can raise revenue, when the reality is we have a tax code that doesn't bring in the revenue that our state needs. And as a result, we are underfunding our educational programs by hundreds of millions of dollars. And quite frankly, it's unacceptable. It's abhorrent. It's against my values as someone who's a public school attendee and as someone who has, a young nephew now in the public education system. It's shameful to me, particularly when we talk about special education. It's shameful to me that we cannot fund and make a promise to our most vulnerable people in this state.
Okay, so the next question kind of dovetails onto that.
Sure.
And you addressed, because the first part of this next question is, what responsibility does the state government have to provide quality education? And you clearly you answered that. I mean, it is codified in the Constitution, and so the next part of the question is really, what should government, beyond the local schools, local school boards, what role should they play in the development and implementation of school curriculum?
Mm. Now, when you're talking about school curriculum, you're meaning,
content of the courses, and specifically how they should be taught. I mean, how much of it should be left up to the local school boards
Mhm.
versus coming down from on high?
Yeah, well, certainly, I think, the state can give overarching guidelines, of course, um, in terms of types of curriculum they would like to see. I think that certainly individual school districts have a lot of autonomy and freedom in terms of how that curriculum gets implemented in a lot of ways. And I think that they're something that we don't see a lot is uh, bringing our stakeholders to the table, working, as representatives and as a representative of the 35th, I certainly would like to be working with our public school districts in identifying, gaps in our curriculum and identifying implementation of our curriculums. And I think that that's something that as state and local, we can be cooperating more and working together. Um, as I mentioned, I think that there's a lot of autonomy and freedom that our local school jurisdictions have with how they design and implement their curriculums. But certainly I think that the state also has kind of a overarching responsibility, as I mentioned, because it is codified in our Constitution to guarantee quality education. Part of that is up to the state to determine what is quality, what does quality look like, what does equitable curriculums look like, what does a comprehensive curriculum look like. So, I think that there's a lot of joint responsibility in that regard in terms of what the state's responsibility is. And that certainly extends down to the local level. And then I think that there needs to be a lot of overarching cooperation between us as elected leaders that go back to our constituents, that go back into our communities and work with our local public school districts to make sure that those curriculums are being implemented or how they're being implemented and working together in that process.
All right, so this next question is not one that you've touched on yet. So,
Okay.
yeah, here's a fresh question for you.
All right.
I'm sure it's one that you've heard over and over and over again. But beyond the direct financial support, like grants and through the CARES Act and the Washington State Department of Commerce, and is there any other support, or what can local government do to provide the small businesses in recovering from COVID-19? I mean, we can't just keep throwing money at the problem.
No. My my gut, and it may be a little flippant to say, is my gut is we as government officials can start listening to the scientists and start listening to the evidence. And we have heard from our leading experts and our leading scientists that if we as communities had masked up months earlier, we would have saved countless more lives. I think that what we need to be doing as elected officials is stop playing partisan politics, stop playing politics around masks, stop playing politics around this pandemic, and actually listen to what our scientific community is telling us, because the only way we are going to navigate out of this and be on another side where we have a vaccine, where we have hopefully a new normal that is COVID-free, is to actually listen to the community that is trying to guide us out of this pandemic. That is probably the most, the most realistic way that we help our communities is by leading with science. That is not a monetary thing. That doesn't require too much of a sacrifice other than a personal commitment. It's a personal commitment from all of us. If we care about our small businesses, that if we care about the people in our communities, then we need to be listening to the scientific community. I, of course, think there is a degree in which we as a community can be helping our small businesses with, patroning them with, if it's a restaurant that's doing takeout, to order takeout from them, finding ways to support our local businesses however we can. I personally have been doing that myself. I, located down to the Thurston County area in February. And so I only got to experience the community for about a couple of weeks, and then the pandemic hit and everything shut down. And now that, we're starting to move into, I think Olympia's been in phase 3 now for a few months. I've been taking whenever there is free time, or quite frankly, whenever I've just forgotten to eat because I've been working and campaigning, I've been trying to go out and find a new business to support, a new local business to give my money to. And I think that there's a lot that we as individuals, if we do have, because not everyone does, but if people do have, expendable income or the ability to support their local businesses, I highly encourage them to do so. I think that, we have to address this pandemic as both individuals and as a community. And it's a community endeavor, it's a community responsibility, and it's a commitment by our community to be looking out for each other. So, in absence of, revenue opportunities and getting, grants and things like that, those are, certainly some of my answers. And, they may be a bit, in your face in terms of just listen to the science because it sounds so simple. But in reality, there's a lot of people that aren't listening to the science. And the longer we ignore our scientific community, the longer we ignore this pandemic and the severity of it, the longer this drags out and the longer that it hurts our small businesses and the longer it hurts our communities. My heart breaks for the local communities that have had to close down. I've seen several of them close down here in the Olympia area. I've seen places close down in Shelton, like the Bard's Bounty. I don't want to see any more of our small businesses close. I want to see them, open. I want to see them thriving. I want to see them part of our community. But again, part of that too is we need to be doing our due diligence and responsibility as citizens that care for one another, to listen to the science, to take this pandemic seriously so that we can get to the other side and we can, open back up and allow our business community to thrive in a new normal.
All right, thank you, Colton. That was pretty painless, I think, right?
I think so.
I think that's all the questions that I have for you right now, and I know that you are, like you said, busy campaigning and working, and 2 more weeks, about 2.5 more weeks, and you'll be able to get on with your life one way or the other, whether it's new life or dedicate your life back to what you're working on. So I really appreciate your cooperation and your time with this, and I want to encourage everybody that's watching to check out the other videos that are available on our YouTube channel for the PortOrchardChamber.com. Other candidates there, and to wrap things up, Colton. Do you have a summary? One last pitch before we go, and before the ballots should be hitting the doors any day now.
Yeah, Thurston decided to send their ballots a week early, so I have already even put my ballot in the mailbox. I encourage everyone to, vote as soon as you get your ballots. Vote early. Why wait until November 3rd? There's just, Washington is one of the proud few that gets to be an all mail-in state. We have no postage necessary. So, get that ballot, do your research, fill it out. If you have any questions for me, you can go to my website at electcoltonmyers.com. You can email me directly at info@electcoltonmyers@gmail.com. Or no, info@electcoltonmyers.com. Sorry, I had to think about that for a second. And, just to reiterate what I reiterated again, I stepped up really because this community is my home. I love this community. And I've recognized that we can do better. We have been, in my opinion, taken for granted and left behind for too long by ineffective leadership. And I believe together that we can get results for our community again. And so I'm, humbly asking for your support in this election, and humbly asking for your vote so that we can start to put our community interests first again. So thank you again to Matt, to the Chamber, to everyone who is listening and paying attention to this critical election cycle, because too often I think we listen to the chaos happening at the top at the federal level and don't necessarily pay attention to just how important these down ballot races are and just how much these races influence our day-to-day lives. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day, and good luck in the next couple of weeks. And
thank you.
We'll talk to you later.
All righty. Thank you so much, Matt.
Thank you.
Thank you.